But I've learned something new since then, and I think it's a blockbuster, maybe. And I've just sent an email to Theresa Tam's office asking for her to answer and explain. I'll let you know if I get an explanation. It's a story from the Guardian newspaper in the United Kingdom. That's a lefty newspaper, but sometimes they do interesting work no matter what your political stripe. This is one of those times. Here's the story here. Caught in a superpower struggle. The inside story of the WHO's response to coronavirus. Caught between the US and China, the World Health Body has been unable to enforce compliance or information sharing. So they framed it as the US versus China. In some ways that's right, but only in the same way that you have policemen versus robbers, or firemen versus a fire. They're opposites, but they're not morally equal to each other. Dr. Fauci, Donald Trump's chief health advisor, he has his politics, and you can agree or disagree with him, but I don't think anyone would doubt that he's being candid and transparent and acting in good faith. As in, even if he's mistaken on something, he's trying to do what he thinks is right. Call me naive, but I believe that. Trump seems to, obviously, as well. Whereas whoever is the Chinese equivalent to Dr. Fauci, well, there could be no such thing. Fauci goes on countless media interviews and says what he thinks. He has no minder checking up on him, no censor. I suppose Trump could fire him if he wanted to, but he doesn't seem to want to. I don't think for a second that Fauci would hesitate to disagree with Trump if his heart or mind told him to. I don't think Fauci would lie for Trump. There is no one like that in China. There just isn't. There's no counterpart. They don't have a free press. I'm sure there is a medical expert who actually gives advice to Xi Jinping, but he would do so in private so as not to embarrass the dictator or cause him to lose face. And even then, there's a risk of telling the truth to an omnipotent tyrant. If you think the news will upset a tyrant, you don't want to say it. It's hard to speak truth to power at all. I can imagine it would be very hard to criticize Donald Trump. But Trump will not kill you or send you and your family to an internment camp if you offend him. He'll give you a mean nickname maybe, and that's about it. I mean, Trump keeps letting Jim Acosta of CNN ask questions almost every day. He seems to like it maybe. You ask one gotcha attack question like that to Xi Jinping, and it's off to the gulag for you. So my point is, it's not a battle at the WHO between two teams, like a sports match. It's between medical doctors and public health officers acting in good faith and honesty and transparency, the Western democracy way, and one big murderous dictatorship that cares about saving face and tamping down unrest at all costs. To equate the two would be like equating firemen and a fire. Okay, that's just my thoughts on the headline, but back to the Guardian story. This is interesting. Remember, throughout January, the WHO was repeating the Chinese lie that the virus was not contagious. Here's a killer tweet. I call it a killer tweet because it surely led to many deaths from people who trusted it. Anyways, here's what the Guardian says happened on January 22nd and 23rd. Apparently, there was a battle raging within the WHO about whether or not to tell the truth and declare a global health emergency, a public health emergency of international concern, as they call it. The debate raged on for 2 days within the WHO, but the agency was deadlocked. China insisted the virus wasn't contagious, but other countries' doctors insisted it was. Let me quote. China argued against declaring an emergency on 22 January, but could not have carried the argument alone. And for the vote to have been split, several Western or Western-aligned representatives must have voted with Beijing, voting on whether or not the virus will kill you. But are you with me there? So there's only 15 countries in the world who had a representative on that particular committee, called the IHR Emergency Committee for the COVID-19 Outbreak. So this is the big committee. Only 15 countries. So it's a different committee than the other one Theresa Tam was on. 15 countries in the whole world, and Canada was one of them, and Canada's representative was Theresa Tam. There she is at the end of the list of members. Now, how each country voted on January 23rd is apparently a secret, if I'm reading this Guardian story correct. like so much of what the WHO and other UN agencies do. It's secret. But neither possibility is any good. If Tam voted along with China to lie about the virus and to continue to falsely claim that the virus was not contagious from person to person, she was a party to one of the deadliest political outrages in modern times, possibly a crime. But if she voted against China, and I hope she did, if she voted against China and for publishing the truth about the virus, but was blocked by China, in some ways that's just as bad. Because that means she would have known how bad things were at the WHO. She would have seen firsthand how China was manipulating and blocking the facts using politics, corrupting the science using votes at the UN. And yet she still went on to parrot the WHO line in public and other deceptions. How did she vote in this committee? Did she vote at all? We'll have to find out. I've asked her. I mean, seriously, how much time is Dr. Tam devoting to the UN's WHO and their shenanigans versus attending to her business, her real job here in Canada? But how did she vote? At that key meeting, did she vote with China to keep the cover-up going? Before she voted, did she seek input and approval from Trudeau or his advisors first? What did they tell her to do? And why did she keep all this a secret as thousands died around the world? Don't you see? The WHO isn't good. It's actually evil. Japan's deputy prime minister said it should be called the China Health Organization, not the World Health Organization. Taiwan knows that pretty well too. But here in Canada, we're still following the WHO. Tam sure does. Trudeau does. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.